The Rekkr Chronicles. Monteagle, Tennessee. A quick resupply mission. Rage against the dying of the light. Rekkr knelt in the bushes, waiting. He was reading a poetry book that he had found at the last abandoned gas station that the team had passed by. The poem he was reading was written by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old rage should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Those wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. And then he heard it. From a distance, a heavy military truck was slowly approaching. Rekkr took his eyes off the pages and looked up, confirming what he had heard. Putting the book inside his rucksack, he slowly laid down into position. 400 meters before him, a road serpentines from left to right. Perched on a hill and looking down, he had a clear field of view between the tangle of the trees and shrub. There was a pair of burnt-out cars on the right and a wrecked SUV on the left. The distance was approximately 100 yards or a football field away. Visibility was nominal, with minimal cloud cover. There were no animals. The carrion birds had long since picked clean whatever corpses remained in those cars. It had been over a week since their last encounter with the Legion. The last checkpoint provided some modest intel on local patrol routes by the Legion's poorly trained and even poorer equipped conscripts, along with a paltry supply of water and food. That was it. He had nearly exhausted his ammunition, mopping up the remainder of the local patrol group in this area. And it was a shame. Years ago, before the rise of the beast system and its godless functionaries, those men could have been his friends, students, or useful members of a local community he would have taken pride in giving his business to. Now they were enemies. He understood the necessity to live and eat, to even provide for a family. But plenty of men had the courage to not comply with the mark. Those that failed this divine test and served the beast were all fair game. It was easy to check whose side you were on. You were either marked or you weren't. Those who were marked were not allowed into these refuges, though many would try. There are two types of citizens in the world now. Those sealed by the angels of God, faithful people, and those who sided with the Antichrist, commonly referred to as the beast, who chose to stand opposed to the warnings of John the Revelator. The sealed people of God were divinely protected and were usually found hunkered down in reinforced refuges, a place that angels would watch over and protect fiercely. Others that were sealed by God were those who would openly oppose the beast. They were often seen fighting against the armies of the beast, but were always overwhelmed by sheer size of the beast's legions. Many would be taken captive, and many were executed. Those who took the mark were forever changed. Not always in their outward appearance, but rather in their behavior. Though for some, it would morph them into creatures that were once talked about in legends and scary stories. The mark tainted their soul, their flesh, and their minds. They would become craven, desperate, some driven insane, and others filled with a suicidal regret. Some had tried cutting the mark off of their hands until they realized the mark sank deep through all layers of the skin, turning the skin a bright red and swollen from infections. Some tried cutting off their own hands, hoping it would free them from it, but the redness would still travel up the arm and spread. Those poor people, if caught, would have the marks stamped into their foreheads, for surely there would be no attempts at removing it afterwards. Those people didn't last long without the medicine required to counteract the mark. The mark was a genetically infused tattoo-like stamp, reminiscent to a QR scanning code with the numbers 666 grafted into a spiral in the direct center of the design. The ink in the mark was a living virus that ate its way down the skin and into the bone. It got into the DNA itself and would mutate it, causing severe side effects. The special medicines that would counteract the effects of the mark were not to only combat the infection it caused, but also to slow down its side effects. Though not readily available to the average citizens of the world who were marked, but as typical, almost made exclusively available to the elite class. The mark was always painful, and a constant reminder of the choice they had made. Its effects were sometimes equivalent to mad cow disease, but that was in the worst cases when people didn't have access to the medicine. After a while, without the medical treatment, people who were marked would start to change. They would become extremely thirsty and hungry, eating or drinking almost anything in sight. Those people were normally chased out or caught and deported out of the megacities, left to their own devices outside of the walls of these megacities. The changes would mutate their appearances in different ways. Many tried to commit suicide in various ways until another nightmare of Scripture was revealed to them. They could not remain dead. Their bodies would reanimate, and the dead would live again. Unlike the beast, whose deadly wound was healed, the mark would not heal from their wounds, but would go on to suffer, no matter how mortally wounded they were. This would cause many to reconsider an attempt at death, no matter how much they sought it. At first, the mark was considered to be a technological achievement in healing the human body. It stopped the aging process, stopped diseases, and even cancer